Hello, Balki. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ash. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for being with me on the show. I wanted to learn so much from you, and it's a pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Likewise, Ash. It's my pleasure.
Great. All right, then. So imagine, Balki, we are in a room full of ambitious founders and early stage builders, right? No one knows your name, and you've got just a few minutes to introduce yourself, not with your title or where you have worked, but with the stories that explains why people should trust what you have to say. How would you begin?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, my default is go to my profession. So, let me try something. Yeah, so hi, I'm Balki. I'm a fractional CTO. 90% of the people I meet don't understand what that means. So their immediate question is, what exactly is fractional CTO? I've never heard what that means. Then I go into a little bit of that itself to me is a curiosity builder, that title I have right now. So I go a bit into the details. For, I've been in the industry for 20 years. For the first 10 years, I was a software engineer, a nerd slinging code at whatever comes my way. And for the second half of that 20 years, I've been a engineering leader, helping and managing other code monkeys. About a year ago, I decided to become a fractional CTO, and that was because of a combination of several things. I realized I put in not 10,000 hours, not 20,000 hours, more than 30,000 hours into this craft and profession of engineering and helping other software companies build their product. And I've done that very strategic way. So worked at small companies, worked at large companies, managed US based teams, managed offshore teams. So I have a very distinct and very diverse experience. And I feel I'm one of the world's best to help software companies scale. And I realized I could do that for multiple companies. So that's what fractional CTO is. I'm a CTO for all practical purposes, but I do that for different companies at the same time. Right now, I'm helping 3 companies scale.
Got it. Great stuff. So let's dig into a little bit deeper into your story then. You said that you divided your whole journey into two parts, early 10 years and then the next 10 years. Tell our listeners one of the compelling stories from your first 10 years when you used to juggle the code, whatever used to come to your way. Some of the crazy numbers you came across or you understood, like the code you have written by used by, I don't know, tens of millions of people, or service you have produced. And then what did that experience actually taught you to become a fractions CTO?
Yeah, I could talk about some technical things. Maybe a story that could be interesting is the journey itself. So that 10 years was actually 5 different companies. So I joined a small consulting company at the start of my career. There was like maybe 15 or 20 consultants. All of those consultants were part of a banking software company. So if these days, online banking is a given for all of us, but back
Yeah.
then it was still a very cutting edge banking,
Mm,
online banking 20 years ago. So we all worked at the first online banking company actually in the US.
mm,
Um, after a after a year or so, the company realized that they were paying too much for us as consultants, so they
mm,
absorbed us all as as a entity. So that was
mm,
the first acquisition. That went on for a few years, actually, 6 or 7 years. And then that company wasn't doing so great, but also uh, as an independent entity, they were not that appealing. So a bill payment company bought us, which was about 10, 15 times bigger than us. So that was a reasonable cultural change. But interestingly, just 3 months later, another Fortune 50 company gobbled up that other bill pay company. So it was a series of acquisitions. So what was unique for me in that 10 years was went from 10% to 100% to 3,000% to 35,000-person company through these successive acquisitions. And that actually molded my perspective on the world, on my career, and what I can influence and what I liked. So that was like a mini journey within my entire career journey. And I can maybe talk about the takeaways if that's helpful during that
Yeah, that would be
transition.
good. And good to understand more about some numbers, some projects you have done, which could be known for some of our listeners.
Yeah, so the scale was pretty major, if you can imagine. So the way that the company we built that company was it was from the beginning built for scale and security. So we only targeted the largest 30 banks in the country
Mm.
for a couple of reasons. One is smaller banks didn't even care about online banking. Again, if you can imagine 20 years ago.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
plus, we were so expensive, only large banks could afford it. So it was like pretty much everyone in the large 30 banks in the US. So
So
millions and millions of users.
could we say JP Morgan, or that's not in the list?
Uh, Back then, I don't think they were on the list. So I can't name names, but the biggest of biggest banks in the US were our clients.
So
But
I
they
can
used us for
imagine.
a very specific thing. You can name
Yeah,
names.
Bank of America, I guess, HSBC. Um, I don't know any other banks from states actually. Maybe
Wells Fargo is big.
Fargo is big. Okay.
Wells Fargo, Bank of the West. Some,
Hmm.
we'll know some of the top five or seven, but there's like after seven, not many of us know because the top seven have like 50% market share or something crazy like that. So many of us consumers bank there.
Mm.
But there are many regional banks that are quite big. So in Southeast, there's a AmSouth. In the Northeast, there's TD North, things
Mm.
like that. So they're they have control or influence over several states. So they all
You
divided.
said that you had a very small team, like a bunch of consultants working in the small startup, and it got acquired, right? How many were there? Like 20?
About 20 of us consultants, but we were working for this software or online banking software company that was probably between 100 and 150 people total. So, as you can imagine, as a pure tech company, 70% of us were in engineering.
Engineering technology. And anything specific you were building there that time, or it's more about the integration? Because I remember 20 years back, if I go to a cash machine, first of all, not every bank had cash machines. There were very selected banks who had cash machine. But then if I go to a cash machine, withdraw some cash, it takes 3 days for me to see that updated into my bank account that I have withdrawn that money. That was the delay we used to experience in UK. Was it similar in US 20 years back or different?
That's a good question. So, what we see in a banking center or ATM or even online banking is just like a very thin slice in front of a massive architecture behind scenes, right? So, especially payments, there's like so many nuanced parts of payments. I actually worked in payments for 5 years after that, banking, specifically payments. But long story short, even today, like, I transfer some money between my own accounts. I did see the pending transaction, but for it to post, it'll take, depending on the amount and risk and where you're uh, doing that, it takes 2 to 3 days for it to actually post on my account, right? So the good thing is you can at least see a pending transaction these days. I don't remember honestly what we saw in banking, but yeah, just the being able to see my accounts and transactions online itself was a delight 20 years ago. And
Mm,
then the company that acquired us, that company was hyper specialized in bill payments. Again, if you can go back 20 years, bill payments were a luxury. All of us had, reams of checks that we wrote and mailed to our billers and our providers, right? So being able to do that online and to pretty much anyone. So it started with only the partners. So the parent company, by the way, it was called Check Free, but they were a monopoly in the payments industry.
mm,
What they did was they partnered with the major billers like electricity companies, gas companies, and other banks, so they could post the payment very quickly. But
mm,
behind scenes for maybe 20, 30, 50% of the partners, they didn't have any partnership with them. So they would actually take the money from me and then write a check behind scenes and mail it. So it could take up to five days, right? So just like regular check.
mm.
So yeah, an interesting fact is that they used to charge for bill pay. Again, today we take everything for granted. Uh, but banks used to say up to 5 bills, it's free. From 5 to 10 bills, you pay 50 cents per bill, etc. If you, I don't know if you remember all of that detail. It was because of the infrastructure needed behind scenes, right? It's not just an
Indeed.
electronic payment that goes off. Even today, I can't tell for sure, but if you see your bill payments, several of them will be paid by check or some other slow way to the provider.
Interesting. Interesting. So let's move to the next part of your journey then, the next 10 years, where you mentioned that you've been into the leadership roles. Share one of the most compelling stories you have in your pocket where you have had this big impact. Something like a story of an underdog where you have taken an organization or a team or a project from zero or whatever stage they were to a stage which was mind blowing and a big impact.
Yeah. One company I worked at, we, that company was remote native, so they could hire and they hired wherever they could. But by the time I joined, there were folks in maybe 6 or 7 different countries. But after I joined, we raised over $110 million. So what that meant, this was during the heyday of startups and funding VC rounds and all that. So it was like, blank check, 110 millions is a lot of money. So there was immense pressure from the VCs to scale, like
Mm,
scale the product, which means scale the engineering team. So we we opened up the floodgates of hiring, and within about 8 months, we hired over like 50 people, and pretty much everybody was in a different country. So people from 35 different countries, I think, when we paused our hiring. So there would be so many people, like they would be the only person in that country.
mm,
I didn't get as much involved in the payroll side of things and the legal issues of doing that, but just managing the communication and getting the work done through folks from these countries, like, at bare minimum, remembering where that person is from was like a adventure, right? So, in fact, I remember we built a app on top of Google Maps where we could put pins on the people where they are to like see a visual of all the people they were. I mean, it was not a large scale like Google or Microsoft, but the ratio of number of people and countries was crazy.
mm,
So yeah, that brings back some pretty good memories of the cultural differences, how to, we had tools for almost every part of the operation. Like we had to buy, we could not use the normal tools that could tell like where the person is from. We had to buy subscriptions to Time Doctor or something like that, where we could actually tell like this team of people, these are the 5 different time zones they're in, and that's their current time. So the regular tools didn't could not accomplish something like that. So yeah, that was good. So that was the first place. We also coined the term remote first. I don't know if we coined it, but we kind of were uh, one of the companies that was talked about as a remote first, widely globally remote first company. We were, by the way, a YC company, so a lot of the industry knew about us.
Mhm. Got it. Got it. Great. And let's move to the next chapter of your life. Now you have become a fraction CTO. You said that a lot of people don't know, but apparently everyone on the show knows what fractional CTO is because I've been talking with them for a while now. And people understand what fractional CTO is. What they don't understand is, I think, the full potential or the value the fractional CTOs bring to the table, because that is having a founder joining to. First of all, finding a co-founder is more difficult than finding a girlfriend, because you can make mistake finding a girlfriend and then have another one because you're not legally binded. But if you find a wrong co-founder, the whole baby, which is the business you're building, might not actually flourish. So that's the difficult part of finding somebody who is, interested in the baby you want to raise together, interested in the business model, and is interested in what you're doing. What was your experience, and why do you think we have this perception in the industry about hiring somebody so senior is exemplarily expensive?
Yeah, back to your thing about co-founder, right? So I 100% agree. So I've not seen a single company where the co-founders did not work out and the company actually existed. There's one of my friends is rising, then he's
Indeed,
that's
indeed.
what the execs do, whether we agree
Yeah,
or
got it. Got it. Cool. So let's move to what everybody's talking nowadays, AI. How is that affecting the CTO perception? I'm talking about your perception. I'm not talking about the companies hiring CTOs or um, technical people, because I still think that technical people are relevant. They are doing fabulous job in the industry, but obviously it's expected from them to deliver 400, 500% productivity because of AI. What's your perception, or what's your opinion on that? And then how it is affecting the whole industry?
identity
Yeah,
crisis.
yeah.
And but there's the cash
Usually there's
cow,
gonna be that.
but
Yeah.
has the most tech using.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally understand that. And especially with all the girth in the code, it just gets more and more difficult. Great. So Balki, throughout your journey then, you have had multiple experiences. There must have been valuable lessons learned, right? If you don't mind sharing, could you reflect on your experiences and tell us about um, one mistake or a setback that you encountered along the way that you now consider a regret, or not a regret, or lessons learned? And additionally, what advice would you give to our listeners based on this experience? Trust.
Before I
Got it. Great. Great stuff. So let's get into our quick fire round then. I've got six quick fire questions for you. If you feel anytime that you don't want to answer one of the questions, you just say, let's skip that one and we will skip the question. But I don't think so. We will need to, because they're very, very straightforward. You ready?
let's do it.
Okay, great. What are the top three strategies in 2025 to start building a software product from the inception so that it doesn't have any technical debt at a later stage. Got it. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
Five
Right.
dysfunctions of a team.
Five dysfunctions of team. Okay, cool. What's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder? Interesting. Yeah, a lot of people say great. A lot of people say about things like, problem solving, but this is also a really good one. Okay, what's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit? Yeah, that feels really good, isn't it, when you mark them done? Yeah. Great. What's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to work with if you had time?
Up. Maybe at some point I'll request that he could come on the podcast as a guest, but I'm helping him build his dream right now. So it's super exciting how to use chess to help kids focus. I think it's a pretty cool idea because that helped him, and he's helping several kids, other kids do the same.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I would love to have him. Uh, Please do introduce me to him. Last but not least, what's an interesting or a fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Uh, People in my closest network know, but I love comedy, so I go practice stand-up comedy whenever I feel
Okay.
like too stressed out. So, and
Oh,
then
that's nice.
perform at small venues. Usually, it's like company parties, personal, like my reunion or something like that. So, every day I'm thinking or looking for material for my comedies. I didn't find any in this interview, but that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully. Great. Cool. Well, Valky, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story and packing last 2 decades of building, your brand, your profile. If people want to check out, people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it?
The best way is on my LinkedIn, Balky /Balky, and I post there twice a week. So I would love for people to check it out and connect with me if they see any synergy there.
Great. Valky, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Thank you so much, Ash.